ATA for refusing to take my ex-wife back after she left me and our son to chase some empowerment fantasy her cousin pushed on her, only to come crawling back once her new life collapsed. I used to think I could handle anything. Blood, broken bones, screaming chaos. It came with the job. But nothing, not even the worst calls I ever ran as a paramedic, prepared me for what it felt like to watch the woman I loved slip away inch by inch. My name is Gavin. I'm 34. I live in Akron, Ohio, and I married Emily 2 years ago in a courthouse ceremony that was quick, simple, and perfect. Back then, everything felt easy. We'd wake up tangled in each other, laugh about nothing over burnt toast, talk about dreams like we had all the time in the world. Then Max came along, and nothing's felt easy since. Emily was the one who brought it up first. She was late, and then she wasn't just late. She was pregnant. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor while she held the test like it had personally betrayed her. She cried for almost an hour. I didn't know what to say, only that I wasn't going anywhere. We'll figure it out, I told her. I believed it. And for a while, so did she. We moved out of our one-bedroom rental and into a loft Emily found online. She stood in the empty space with her hand on her belly, grinning like a kid. This is our future, she said. And I wanted to believe that too, even when I looked at the price tag and felt a tightness in my chest. So I started picking up extra shifts. Overnights. Doubles. Every gnarly call. Every ugly hour. I took it. I was barely home except to sleep, but I told myself it was worth it. That every mile I drove in that ambulance was buying Max's crib, Emily's peace of mind, our version of the American dream. Emily quit her freelance gigs before Max was even born. Said she needed to focus on the pregnancy. I didn't argue. She wanted a nest, and I wanted her to feel safe. Even when the bills piled up and I could feel the edges of my patience start to fray, I kept my mouth shut. I thought that's what being supportive meant. Max came early, screaming, red-faced, hungry. And Emily changed. Not all at once. It was subtle at first. She stopped brushing her hair, let the dishes stack up, would stare at the TV without even turning it on. I figured she was tired. Hell, we both were. But then came the days when she wouldn't speak to me unless it was to ask me to take out the trash. Or when she'd sigh loudly every time I yawned after coming home from a night shift. Like she was daring me to complain. You get to sleep, she snapped once. Must be nice. I almost laughed. I'd been awake 36 hours straight, my boots still wet from hosing off someone else's blood. But I didn't say anything. I just went upstairs, crawled into bed, and tried not to feel like a ghost in my own house. I used to come home and kiss her without even thinking. Now I hovered in the doorway, unsure of the temperature inside. Some nights I'd watch her from the hallway, cradling Max with this look on her face I couldn't read. Not love, not hate, just distance. Like I was watching someone through glass. We were surviving, but not together. It started with a simple question. Hey, Emily said one afternoon while I was getting ready for a shift. Would it be okay if Renee came by during the week? Just to help with Max. I'm kind of drowning. I looked up from lacing my boots. She sounded tired. Her hair was in a messy bun, spit up on her sweatshirt, eyes dull like she hadn't slept in a week. Maybe she hadn't. Yeah, I said. Of course. If she's willing to help, that's great. I figured Renee would drop by a couple times a week, hold Max while Emily showered or ran to the store. Just a little relief. What I didn't expect was how quickly Renee became part of the daily routine. At first, I didn't think much of it. I'd come home and find Renee rocking Max while Emily finally ate a hot meal. Or they'd both be sitting on the couch, whispering and laughing like teenage girls. It was nice, seeing Emily smile again. I told myself that. But then I noticed the little things. Renee started bringing over groceries, not just a few items, but full bags. She'd cook dinner, clean the kitchen. One night, I came home and found Max already bathed and swaddled, sleeping peacefully in his crib. Emily didn't even look up from the couch. Oh, she said casually. Renee took care of everything. I stood there in the living room, holding my takeout container like an idiot. Okay, I said. Cool. Renee was around constantly. More than me. And Emily started talking about her like she was the only person on earth who understood. Renee says Max might have colic. Or Renee thinks I should try a different swaddle. Suddenly, I wasn't the one she asked for an opinion. I was just there. The warmth between us started thinning out, like stretched fabric. Emily didn't touch me anymore. Not out of anger, just habit. She stopped asking how my shifts went. If I tried to tell a story, she'd nod politely, then go back to her phone. Some nights she'd be texting and laughing under the covers, and when I asked who it was, she'd say, just Renee, like that was explanation enough. One night I came home and heard music playing. Emily and Renee were in the kitchen dancing with Max between them, laughing like nothing in the world was wrong. I watched from the hallway. They didn't notice me at first. When Emily finally looked up, she blinked like she'd forgotten I lived here. Hey, she said flatly. Hey, I replied, still holding my bag from work. Long shift. She nodded. We saved you a plate, and turned back to Renee. I couldn't put my finger on it, not exactly. But something was happening. Something under the surface. Emily was pulling away, not dramatically, not with fights or accusations. Just one day at a time. One shared look at a time. And every time Renee was here, Emily lit up in a way she never did with me anymore. I was losing her. And I didn't even know to whom, not really. Not yet. It wasn't like Emily suddenly turned cold. It was more like the warmth just faded, like when a fire dies down and you don't notice until your hands start to go numb. She started making little comments. Sharp, out of nowhere, like pinpricks I wasn't ready for. You get to have a life, she muttered one morning when I kissed Max goodbye before a double shift. I stopped in the doorway. What's that supposed to mean? She didn't answer. Just walked off, still in her robe, like the conversation wasn't worth finishing. Another day, I offered to run errands for her, thinking it might help. She didn't even look up from her phone. I don't need you to fix things. I need you to actually be here. I'm working, Emily, I said carefully. So we don't lose the roof over our heads. I didn't ask for this house, she snapped. You wanted the loft, remember? That one stung. I stood there in the kitchen, stunned silent. She was the one who insisted this place was our future. A couple weeks later, I came home to find a stranger on our couch. Emily had hired a part-time sitter without telling me, some college girl named Kayla. Apparently, she was reliable, smart, and most importantly, gave Emily a break. Could have mentioned it, I said later as we lay in bed, side by side but miles apart. I didn't think you'd care, she said, flipping her phone over. You're barely here anyway. It was like that every night. Her face lit up at her screen, grinning at something someone else said. Most of the time, I didn't even bother asking who it was. She started dressing differently too. Tighter jeans, bolder makeup, like she was stepping into someone new every day. She dyed her hair lighter, got her nails done, started wearing perfume again, not the soft stuff she used to like, but something sharp and floral that didn't smell like her at all. You look nice, I said one night as she headed out. She looked at me like she forgot I could still see her. Thanks, she said, already reaching for her phone again. Renee and I are hitting a cafe near her co-working space. She didn't invite me. She never did anymore. I tried. I really did. One night after Max was down, I brought out a bottle of wine and her favorite takeout. I figured maybe we just needed to talk, like real talk. I told her I missed her, that I wanted to find a way back. She stared at me for a long time, then shook her head slowly and said, maybe you just can't handle me evolving. That word echoed in my skull for days. Evolving. Like I was the outdated version she'd grown past. I didn't yell, didn't start a fight. I just watched her close her laptop and walk away to shower, like I hadn't just laid my heart out on the damn table. After that, I stopped trying so hard and started watching. I noticed how her mood shifted based on who she was texting, how her tone changed when Renee called, softer, more animated. I noticed how often the name Jake came up when she talked about her new cafe job, how she'd laugh harder at a message than she had at anything I'd said in months. She thought I wasn't paying attention, but I was, because something was off, deeply off. And for the first time, I started wondering if what we were living in was still a marriage, or just the slow-motion wreckage of one no one wanted to name. It happened on a Tuesday night. I was home early, a rare thing, and Emily was upstairs putting Max down. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Not once, but 3 times in quick bursts. I wasn't looking for anything. I really wasn't. But something about the way it lit up over and over, the way she always grabbed it before I could even glance in its direction. I just couldn't help myself. The screen was still unlocked. And there it was. Renee. It's time you stopped pretending. You've outgrown him. I froze. Another message came in right behind it. Renee. He's holding you back, Em. You deserve more than night shifts in silence. I just stared at the screen, not breathing. My pulse was loud in my ears. Then I scrolled. A thread. Long ongoing. Pages of messages between the two of them. Not just jokes or updates about Max. Not even venting. This was something else entirely. Renee. I told you Jake would get it. He's emotionally intelligent. He listens. Emily. I couldn't believe how easy it was to talk to him. It didn't feel wrong. Jake. That name again. My stomach turned. I kept scrolling. Further back. Weeks ago. Emily. He asked me to coffee. I told Gavin it was a networking thing through Renee's office. That's not a lie, exactly. Renee. Babe, it's just coffee. You're allowed to have a life. You're allowed to explore what makes you feel alive. There it was. The networking thing she mentioned last Thursday. The day she came home flushed, humming to herself like she'd won a prize. I backed away from the counter like it had burned me. She came downstairs 10 minutes later, barefoot, ponytail swinging, humming something soft. Max is finally out, she said, not looking at me. Who's Jake? I asked quietly. She stopped mid-step. What? I saw the messages, I said. My voice didn't shake. From Renee. From you. About coffee. About how I'm holding you back. Her face drained of color. You went through my phone? You left it unlocked, I said. Didn't think I had to. She looked away, arms folding across her chest. It's not what you think. Really? Because it looks like you've been letting Renee steer you straight into an emotional affair while I was busting my ass to keep this family from falling apart. Jake's just someone I talk to, she said. He's kind. He sees me. You haven't seen me in a long time. I laughed bitterly. You mean I haven't worshipped you like Renee does? Or babied you like Jake probably does? Sorry, I was too busy working 70 hours a week to pay for your dream loft. That's not fair, she whispered. You're right, I said. It's not. None of this is. She looked at me then, really looked, like she finally understood she couldn't squirm out of this one. I don't know what I want anymore, she said. You already made your choice, I said calmly. You just didn't have the guts to say it. She flinched. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just walked past her, pulled my wedding ring off my finger, and set it on the table between us. I'm done. She stared at the ring like it was foreign, something she hadn't seen in years. I grabbed my keys and went out for air. Not because I needed space. Because I needed to breathe without choking on what we used to be. Emily left the next morning. No dramatic scene. No last-minute begging. Just packed a few bags, bundled Max into his car seat, and left me a note on the counter that said, "This isn't goodbye. It's what's best for Max right now. I'll be in touch." She didn't even sign her name. I found out a few days later she was staying with Renee. Of course, they had it all figured out, probably months in advance. One of Renee's spare bedrooms, a playpen for Max, enough decorative pillows and curated Instagram filters to convince themselves they were doing the right thing. I kept my head down. I got through my shifts. I slept when I could. I kept Max's room exactly the same, like maybe, just maybe, he'd come back soon. Then the knock came. 2 women stood on my porch. Crisp blazers, clipboards in hand. "Mr. Callahan?" one of them said. "Yeah, we're with Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous report about possible neglect while your son is in your care." I blinked. "Excuse me." She looked down at her clipboard. "The report claims that you leave your son unattended during work hours. That he's often alone or unsupervised." I just stood there, stunned. Then I laughed, a single sharp bark that sounded nothing like humor. "You're kidding, right?" "Sir, we do need to follow up. May we come inside?" I stepped back and let them in. I didn't have anything to hide. What I did have, and what I showed them over the next hour, was documentation. Babysitter logs. Kayla had signed in and out every day she watched Max. Security camera timestamps, showing Kayla arriving in the morning and locking up at night. Screenshots of text conversations, me checking in. Kayla updating me about meals, naps, diapers. Photos of Max, playing, napping, smiling, all timestamped. The agents took it all in, quiet and professional. When they left, they said they'd be closing the case. That I was clearly a very thorough and attentive parent. I didn't say anything. I didn't smile. I just nodded and closed the door behind them. Then I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the grain in the wood for a long, long time. They didn't just leave. They weren't just done with me. They were rewriting the story, trying to paint me as unfit, dangerous, disposable. And that meant war. I got to work immediately. Made an appointment with a family attorney. Backed up everything: emails, texts, screenshots, sitter contracts, camera footage, even the messages I'd found on Emily's phone. I built a file. Thick. Unshakable. One that couldn't be explained away with tears or manipulation or some half-baked sob story about empowerment. I stopped thinking like a husband and started thinking like a father. Because Emily wasn't just walking out. She was trying to erase me. And Renee, with her sweet voice and her sideways looks, was helping her do it. They thought I'd stay quiet. They thought I'd be passive, broken, maybe even desperate enough to grovel. They forgot who I was. What I did for a living. What I'd seen. I'd pulled people out of car wrecks with their ribs crushed and lungs collapsed. And they thought I'd fold because of a custody game? No, not a chance. It was a Sunday afternoon when they showed up. No text. No call. Just the buzz of my doorbell and the familiar shape of Emily's car in the driveway. I opened the door slowly, already bracing myself. Emily stood there in jeans and a stiff posture, arms crossed. And behind her, arms folded tight, was Renee, all righteous fury and fake calm. "We need to talk," Emily said, pushing past me before I could answer. Renee followed like she owned the place. I closed the door. Quietly. Calmly. Then reached into my pocket and clicked the tiny button on my earbuds. My lawyer, listening in real time from his office, would hear everything. Emily stood in the center of the living room like it was still hers. Renee leaned against the wall, eyes scanning the house with thinly veiled judgment. "So this is how it's going to be?" Renee said first. "Trying to steal Max out from under her? That's your move." I didn't answer right away. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and took a sip before speaking. No one's stealing anyone, but I am protecting my son from being used as a pawn. Emily's eyes narrowed. You think this is easy for me? You think I wanted it to get this far? You filed an anonymous CPS report, I said flatly. That's not just far, that's nuclear. Her cheeks flushed. I was scared. I didn't know what else to do. You had options, I said. You just didn't like any that didn't paint me as the villain. Renee stepped forward. You're making this toxic. You're weaponizing the past. No, I cut her off. I'm weaponizing facts. I held up my phone. I have documentation of everything. Every sitter log. Every pickup and drop-off. Every dime I spent and every hour I've been home. They both went quiet for a beat. You can't rewrite history just because you regret your choices, I continued. You left. You hid the emotional affair. You tried to frame me as an absentee father while living in another woman's guest room. Emily's lip quivered slightly. She turned to Renee, then back to me. You're twisting it, she said. I changed, Gavin. I needed space to find who I was. You found a man you barely knew and made him a stand-in for everything you thought I wasn't, I said. And now that it's inconvenient, you're back here acting like I'm the one who broke the home. You don't understand, she snapped. You don't know what it's like to feel invisible. You were never around. I was working, I said, voice calm but cold, to afford the house you wanted. The food. The bills. Everything you walked away from without blinking. Renee opened her mouth again, but I raised a hand. No. I'm done with your TED Talks on self-worth and soft betrayal. You want to empower someone? Empower your own life. Stay out of mine. The room went quiet. Emily's arms dropped to her sides. You really don't love me anymore, she said, almost like she was surprised. I stared at her for a long moment. I did. I loved the version of you that fought with me, not against me. The one who held Max at 3 a.m. while I cleaned vomit off the floor. The one who chose family, not fantasy. She looked down. Renee huffed. This isn't over. I smiled. No, I said. It's documented. They left without another word. Emily's shoulders slumped. Renee's lips pressed tight. The front door clicked shut like a gavel. And I stood there in the silence, not triumphant. Just ready. The courthouse didn't feel like justice. It felt like cold floors, stale air, and people trying to look braver than they felt. I sat at the plaintiff's table, dressed in the one suit I owned that didn't smell like disinfectant or adrenaline. My attorney, Cheryl, was calm, methodical, and relentless, exactly what I needed. Emily sat across from me, stiff in a navy blazer. Her expression was somewhere between nervous and furious. Renee wasn't allowed in the courtroom, but I saw her outside earlier, whispering to Emily like they were prepping for war. The judge called us to order. A woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and zero patience for drama. Emily's lawyer started first. The strategy was obvious. Paint me as absent, overworked, emotionally disconnected. Mr. Callahan works irregular hours, often double shifts. He is frequently unavailable for childcare or emotional support, the lawyer said smoothly. This is not about punishing him. It's about ensuring Max has consistent, stable parenting. I didn't react. Cheryl had warned me. Let them talk. Let them spin. Then it was our turn. Cheryl stood, calm as ever. Your Honor, we're not here to debate Mr. Callahan's job. He's a paramedic. He saves lives. And in between that, he's been the sole financial and physical caretaker of Max. She walked to the evidence table and began laying it all out. We have time-stamped babysitter logs, bank statements showing every expense covered by Mr. Callahan, including Emily's phone bill for the last 7 months. Text messages where Ms. Callahan explicitly states she didn't sign up to be a full-time mom, and that Gavin should just keep doing what he's good at, paying for everything. Emily squirmed in her seat. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering furiously. Cheryl didn't stop. We also have security camera footage showing Kayla, the sitter, arriving and leaving on a precise schedule. Meal delivery logs. Email confirmation of pediatric appointments scheduled and attended by Mr. Callahan. Even photos of Max, healthy, fed, laughing, in the home Ms. Callahan claimed was neglectful. The judge flipped through the documents. Her eyes didn't give much away, but her pen stopped moving once or twice when Cheryl read direct quotes. Then came the turning point. Cheryl placed one last piece of paper on the table. This, she said, is a CPS case file. Closed after 24 hours. No evidence found. No concern for Max's safety. It was, in their words, a malicious and baseless report. Emily's face turned red. She didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead, frozen. The judge turned to her. Ms. Callahan, she said evenly, do you dispute these documents? Emily's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, we. Yes or no? The judge cut in. Her attorney hesitated, then sat back down. No, Your Honor. The courtroom went quiet. An hour later, the ruling came down. Full legal and physical custody to Mr. Gavin Callahan, the judge said. Ms. Callahan will be granted supervised visitation until a parenting plan is developed and completed, including individual counseling. Emily's mouth opened, then shut. Her hands clutched the edge of the table like she might fall off the earth. No alimony, the judge added. Property remains with Mr. Callahan. The court sees no evidence of equal financial contribution. Divorce is finalized effective immediately. I didn't smile, didn't celebrate, just nodded. Once, outside, Cheryl patted me on the shoulder. You didn't just win, Gavin, she said. You proved who you are. I watched Emily walk past without a word. Renee wasn't outside waiting for her. For the first time in months, I felt like the ground was solid under my feet. This wasn't revenge. It was clarity. And Max was coming home. It was almost 2 months after the hearing when she showed up. It was just after dinner. Max was sitting on the floor with his dinosaurs, narrating a battle between a T-Rex and a Stegosaurus with all the seriousness of a courtroom drama. I was on the couch folding laundry, feeling the kind of peace that doesn't shout, just settles in quietly, room by room. Then came the knock. I opened the door, and there she was, Emily. She looked nothing like the woman who stood in court. Her hair was frizzy and undone, circles under her eyes, hoodie 2 sizes too big. She held a duffel bag in one hand and nothing in the other. Hey, she said softly. I didn't answer. She shifted awkwardly. Can I come in? No, I said. That threw her. She blinked, clearly expecting something else. An argument maybe. An opening. Not a wall. Renee kicked me out, she said finally. Said I was too emotionally heavy. She's seeing someone new, and I don't really have anywhere else to go. She looked past me into the living room, her eyes landing on Max. He hadn't noticed her yet, still making roaring noises, still lost in his world. I never meant for it to get this bad, she whispered. I thought I had more time. I thought. You thought there'd always be a place here. I finished for her. She nodded, eyes filling. I'm sorry, Gavin, she said, voice cracking. I made a mess of everything. I thought I was chasing something better, but I didn't know what I was doing. I let her talk. Let her feel the silence between us. I need somewhere to land, she added. Just until I get back on my feet. I don't want us back together or anything. I know that's not happening. I just need help. I looked her dead in the eye. You threw it all away, Emily, I said. The marriage. The trust. Max's stability. You walked out and then tried to take me down on the way. That's not something you get to come back from. She looked like she wanted to say more. Like she'd rehearsed another version of this moment. But whatever it was, she let it die. Can I at least say goodnight to him? She asked. I stepped aside just enough to point at the fridge. Visitation schedules posted. You missed your window. She flinched like I slapped her, then nodded slowly. Right, she said. Yeah, of course. She turned to leave, but I called out once more. Emily. She stopped, hopeful. If you ever actually want to be a mother to him again, start with showing up on the right day. Then I closed the door behind her. I locked it. Max looked up from his dinosaurs. Who was that? Just someone passing through, I said. Nothing to worry about. And he went back to playing. Like nothing had happened. Mornings were different now. Not rushed. Not strained. Just quiet. Max and I had a rhythm, cereal, cartoons, then a walk if the weather held. He liked to hold my hand the whole time, even when he got too old to admit it out loud. I let him. Some part of me needed it just as much. I never thought I'd be doing this alone. Diaper runs, parent-teacher meetings, scraped knees and bedtime books. But I was. And it wasn't terrifying anymore. It was peaceful. After Emily left that night, she didn't come back. She sent a few messages here and there, mostly about Max. Sometimes she asked if he was eating okay, if he asked about her. I answered what I had to. No more. No less. Eventually, she stopped asking if there was any chance for rebuilding. She knew the answer. She showed up to 2 of her scheduled visitations, then stopped altogether. Her lawyer sent some half-hearted apologies for emotional distress, but I didn't care. The parenting plan was legally binding. If she wanted back in, she had to earn it. I didn't wait for that. Instead, I focused on Max, and on making our home feel like a real home again, not a war zone in disguise. I started leaving my boots by the door again, put up pictures of just the 2 of us, got rid of the loft's cold, sterile furniture, and replaced it with soft, practical things, like a dad would. I started cooking. Terribly, at first. Max said my pancakes looked like angry faces, and I told him they were just really excited to be eaten. We laughed more. He slept better. He stopped asking where mommy was. I started sleeping too. Not the short, tense naps I used to take between shifts, but real sleep. The kind that sinks into your bones and tells you the worst is over. I stopped checking my phone for messages that weren't coming. Stopped wondering if Renee had a new target. Stopped needing to explain myself to anyone. One night, I stood in the hallway outside Max's door, listening to the sound of his breathing. He was curled under his blanket, clutching a worn-out stuffed lion. The same one Emily once called too childish. I watched him for a while, then whispered, "I got you, buddy. Always." And I meant it. Not just in the way you say things to kids to make them feel better. I meant it in my bones. In my skin. In the quiet way I folded his laundry and packed his lunch and kept his world spinning even after ours had cracked open. I thought about everything that had happened. How easily people twist words like freedom and growth to justify leaving wreckage behind. How some call it empowerment when really it's just escape dressed in better clothes. But I didn't hate Emily. Not anymore. I just saw her clearly. And now? Now I didn't need her. I had Max. And he had me. That was enough. That was everything.